This video is now in session, and if the Democrats do end up rejecting Biden for the 2024 Democratic nominee, their choice for president, this is what they should be doing. This is the most important thing that they should be doing, especially for Joe Biden and the Democratic establishment, which is to endorse a singular candidate to replace Joe Biden, not to have an open primary process, as some pundits might have been dreaming about in their op-eds. And the reason for that is really, it comes down to history. Anytime you have this scenario where the incumbent party is holding the White House, but whoever is the president at that time can't run for re-election, with those circumstances, if you have a primary that becomes contentious between two or more candidates, almost every single time, actually not almost, every single time, that party has end up losing the presidential general election. If you don't believe what I'm saying, go back through history. In 2016, Obama was in the White House, a Democrat, but he could not run for re-election. So now you got an open primary. But with this open primary, you now had deep divisions between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. And so Bernie Sanders voters, it came to the point where Bernie Sanders voters ended up not voting for Hillary Clinton. They didn't vote for anyone in the 2016 general election. And what did that result? Donald Trump winning. The reason why is because Bernie Sanders is because the Democrats got too complacent in the end. They were already in the White House, and so many Bernie Sanders supporters thought they'll just sit this one out. Now let's go to 2008. 2008, the Republicans were holding the White House, George Bush, but he could not run for re-election. So again, you had an open primary. And with this open primary, it created divisions between John McCain, Mitt Romney, and Mike Huckabee. Ultimately, the Republicans did coalesce around John McCain when it came to convention time, but you still had many voters, who would have preferred Romney or Huckabee over McCain. And so when it came to the 2008 general election, Republican voters were not that excited to vote for McCain, and many of them did not end up voting for McCain at all. They actually voted for Barack Obama, although that may be more because Barack Obama is an inspirational candidate, a broadly inspirational one. But even if it was just any other Democratic candidate, a lot of Republican voters would have sat this election out because they were more attached to their candidate over the chosen candidate of John McCain. Now let's go back all the way to 1968. This election, this primary, is starting to have a lot of parallels with the primary that we're having, or the Democrats are having right now in 2024. In 1968, Lyndon B. Johnson ultimately chose not to run for re-election. And so now you had this open primary, a very bitter one that caused riots outside of the DNC. In which city? Chicago, the same city that's hosting the DNC this year. And so you had a pretty even split between Eugene McCarthy and Robert F. Kennedy. And within that split, who ended up getting chosen? Hubert Humphrey, who only got 2.2% of the popular vote out of the states that could actually vote for a Democratic nominee. This primary was so contentious that you had, again, riots. And so what does this mean for 2024? If Democrats have an open primary, and if they follow the advice of pundits, of certain op-ed columnists who state that this primary should be bloody, it should be a scene of democracy in action, of how the sausage gets made, that ultimately portrays a party that is dysfunctional among the American public. And that's the last thing that Democrats need at this moment, especially because many voters think the Democratic Party is incompetent for the lack of uniformity on whether or not Joe Biden should still be the Democratic nominee. So to now continue with this idea of having an uncontrolled party primary is quite ridiculous, because now whoever wins that primary will end up getting bruised. And that is important to note when you only have 4 months left until the election. When the Democrats had their primary in, I forgot when, but this was in the summer of 2016, the Democrats were still not quite decided over if they should support Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders. And even though 4 months may sound like a lot of time, 4 months definitely was not enough time for Democrats, for Bernie Sanders supporters, to get over their loss and support Hillary Clinton. Of course, the stakes are a little bit different this time around because Democrats know that Trump might win the election, but when you start to get attached to a candidate, it eventually becomes pretty hard to get disattached from that candidate. Meanwhile, when you have someone who's been president 4 years ago, whose memories that you're now from that presidency you're now starting to forget, you typically start to remember more of the positives of that presidency rather than the negatives. It's a psychology term. I forgot what it's called, but usually as time progresses, you look back at the past more fondly than when you did look at it when it was at the present at that time. And so with those two factors combined, you now start to have a Democratic Party where you have supporters who might support for a candidate who does not turn out to be the nominee and be like, oh well, I mean I guess I just want to vote for the presidential general election, because again the second factor of recency bias starts to fade away. So that's something the Democrats should note. If they really want to have a chance at winning this election at this point, if they're going to not go with Joe Biden, then they need to coalesce around another candidate quickly. So that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. This video is now adjourned, and I'll see you in the next one.